And good evening, everybody. Welcome back once again. It's time for Syracuse basketball postgame, presented by Krause Health. Brent Axe, Mike Curtis with you, and we are coming off the heels of a 77-68 win, just what the doctor ordered for Syracuse basketball in general. They needed to win one on the road. They did that tonight. They needed to bounce back after Clemson pretty much beat them up on Saturday. They did that. A number of players that had to get back on track, got back on track. All told, pretty good night for the Orange, and they needed it. And we will go over it all with you. Great to have you on board here on this Tuesday evening here. So Syracuse improves to 11-6 on the season. They're now 5-5 in ACC play. And Mike, after a game on Saturday where Clemson just thoroughly dominated Syracuse, a 3 of 25 shooting performance in the first half against Clemson. Syracuse was much better tonight, particularly out of the gate, played a strong first half, had to hold off NC State for a long time in this game. It was a back and forth game, a good game for a while, but Syracuse was better in the first half, but they were particularly better in the second half. And in one key category, Syracuse all over the boards tonight, especially in the second half. We'll go over the numbers here shortly. But the pattern holds, Mike. When Syracuse wins the rebounding battle, they win the game. They're now 10-0 this season. When they win the rebounding battle, they have 11 wins because when they beat NC State just, 11 days ago or so, they lost the rebounding battle, but it was close. Tonight, Syracuse won the rebounding battle, particularly in the second half, and I know that's something Kevin Keatts was talking about in the NC State locker room after the game.
Yeah, Brent, I just came out of the NC State post-game press conference, and Kevin Keatts wanted to pretty much hit on two things in that presser. He said his team gave up way too many offensive rebounds. They gave up 14, and that led to second chance points for the Orange and more shot attempts. I think Syracuse outshot NC State by probably like 15. And another area that he wanted to harp on was turnovers. His team committed an ACC high this season in turnovers today. And those typically translated to Syracuse points. We saw back-to-back during the second half or in the first half. Kadari Richmond had back-to-back steals, and that led him straight to the basket. So two things Keatts wanted to focus on was offensive rebounds and turnovers.
Those are the two stories of the game right there. So let's dive in and give you some numbers here because they really stand out in a lot of ways. We'll start on the team side of things. Syracuse outshot NC State 46-44%. That was close, but you're going to see when we focus in on some second half numbers, they tilt towards Syracuse. Another big thing Syracuse had to do in 3 of their previous 4 games, they had 5 or less three-pointers. 9 of 19 tonight from three-point range, 47%. They were 12 of 16 from the free throw line. We mentioned they won the ever-important rebounding battle, this time 32-28. But, Mike, you mentioned those offensive boards, 14-8 in favor of Syracuse there. NC State actually grabbed more defensive rebounds in this game than Syracuse, 20-18. But the offensive boards key for the Orange. Syracuse had 13 assists tonight. They had 21 points off of those turnovers. For NC State, you mentioned the ACC high turnover rate, 20 for NC State. In this game, Syracuse did turn the ball over 12 times. Certainly didn't matter. In this case, Syracuse won the points in the paint battle, 28-20. Second chance points, 15-8. Now, on the individual side of things, Alan Griffin clearly had his best game of the season for Syracuse, really stepped up. 22 points on the night for him. He added 4 rebounds. 3 steals and a block, had his best defensive game of the season. Buddy Boeheim bounced back from a couple of recent struggles. He had 16 points on the night, 3 of 5 from three-point range. Quincy Guerrier ended up fouling out, but before that, really came on strong in the second half, 14 points and 7 rebounds for him. Robert Braswell got some run off the bench tonight, had a key three-pointer in the second half. He had 5 points in this game, couple of rebounds as well. Now, before the game, it was interesting, Mike, because Kadari Richmond was actually listed as questionable. And as we come to find out, it's because he's going to have a tooth extracted first thing tomorrow morning after Syracuse arrives back tonight from NC State. Didn't matter. Comes out, plays 25 minutes off the bench, 8 points on the night for the Orange. Was a huge spark for Syracuse in the first half and a consistent presence throughout the game.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Brent, but if I have a toothache, I'm staying in bed and I'm not doing anything else.
Where's the Tylenol? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you said it. Kadari came out and had a tremendous impact, even though he was in pain. There in the first half, I remember he turned away a couple of 3-pointers, which he typically doesn't take anymore anyway. But his ability to penetrate in the lane and get his teammates open. He had a sweet pass to Marek Dolezaj there in the first half, and that just goes to show how much of an impact he can make while he's out there. And I'm here to say it, Brent. I think Kadari should start over Joe Girard. And I say this knowing that Joe Girard is the better shooter. But if Joe's not making his shots, he's not a factor in the game. At least when you have Kadari in there, he can defend and he can also facilitate on the offensive end.
So first of all, welcome to the club. Because I've been saying that for a while now. I wrote a column about that. Jim Boeheim gave it a shout out in his post-game press conference. Appreciate that, Jim. Glad you're reading out there. And look, Kadari's just somebody who he's a playmaker. He's great on defense. He's better at the top of the zone. He can penetrate. The only thing you can't do is shoot threes. It's not to say that Joe can't have a role. He absolutely does. As Jim said, as I've said, as everybody's said, all three guards should play and will play, but it's just a better team when Kadari's running the point. If that's with Buddy at the 2, if that's with Joe at the 2. I mean, Joe did have 5 rebounds tonight. I'll give him that, but you said it, Mike. He's out there to shoot. He didn't have it going for the most part on the offensive end. He was aggressive, attacking the basket, getting to the free throw line, looking good in the second half of the Clemson game. Not so much in this game. Joe, at this point, is a situational player. He can still really make an impact off the bench for Syracuse. Just because you don't start doesn't mean you can't make an impact. And Kadari's on the floor when it matters anyway. When you look at the second half, really the last 6-7 minutes of the game, excuse me, more often than not, Kadari Richmond is there. So I guess it all balances out. It doesn't matter who starts and who plays and whatever. But it's got to balance out that the best guy's out there. And you said it, Kadari Richmond's doing that out there with a toothache, right? What can he do when he's healthy? And, Jim mentioned before that he should only play about 20 minutes or so. Like he played 25 minutes out there, not at his best, in a lot of pain, probably on some medication as well. And he looked pretty darn good doing it. So we'll see how that continues to evolve. Jim did say recently at a press conference that it was the plan to get Kadari out there a little bit more anyway. And that's just kind of naturally taking place. Yeah,
absolutely. And when it comes to Syracuse, and I think today was a really good example, Alan Griffin, at times, he looks like Syracuse's best player. And at other times, he looks like he's disinterested and doesn't want to be out there if he's not making shots. But when he's locked in like he was today, I mean, he had his 3-ball clicking. He was hitting his mid-range jump shots. He was engaged defensively. He even took a charge there in the first half. I mean, when he's like that engaged offensively and defensively, he's definitely Syracuse's best player.
He's really coming into his own. You're absolutely right. And look, that's what Syracuse needed tonight, Mike. The last few games, they've just lacked. It's not that they don't play hard, but they get into these iso ball situations. Everybody's kind of standing around waiting for somebody to take charge. Well, Alan Griffin took charge tonight. He does not miss that shot in the paint, either on one side or the other of the free throw line. I'd love to see a shooting percentage there. It's got to be like 90%. He hit some contested threes tonight. I got to tell you, what I liked about his game was defense. He hasn't always been the best defensively. He's getting used to things in the zone, 3 steals and a block. And Mike, the key thing with Allen too, is you said when he's not playing well, it's usually because of turnovers, only 3 turnovers on the night. And he was challenging NC State throughout the game. And they're a team that likes to get after it on defense.
Yeah. And typically earlier in the season, it looked as if Quincy Guerrier was going to be the best player on the team. Simply just because he was able to take his game up a notch offensively. But he kind of struggled there in the first half, didn't really come alive until the second half, and he ended up fouling out with 14 points and 7 rebounds. But it's good that he was able to kind of make an impact on the game before he was able to get out.
Yeah, he had been taken out of the last couple of games, particularly Clemson. He had a huge kind of follow-up jam. That got him on a run where he scored 6 straight points. got the rebounds. Jim was a little critical of him in the post-game press conference about settling for threes at times and not being the player he can be. I mean, NC State's got a few big guys inside. Bates and Helms and DJ Funderburk was back in the lineup tonight, making it a little more difficult on him. And, we got to give Marek Dolzaj his shout out. The usual Marek kind of numbers across the board, box score. He had 6 points on the night, 6 rebounds on the night, 3 assists, couple of steals, a block. Only had 2 fouls on the night, which is huge for him. Donna DeToda and I on Twitter were begging him to shoot a little bit more because he gets that ball, and he's got a one-on-one turnaround jumper, and he always defers. He's almost a little too unselfish at times because he can't hit that shot. But, hey, he did his job and did it well. Bummer for the Orange, Mike. We mentioned Kadari Richmond's injury, if you will. Barama Sidibe did not play. He gave it a go the last 2 games. Before the game, he was listed as questionable with knee soreness. We know that knee has been bothering him all along and bothered him enough. He did travel. He did warm up, but couldn't give it a go tonight. So that's going to continue to be an issue for him for the rest of the season, it would appear.
Yeah. At this point, I'm not sure how much we'll see of Sidibe. He hasn't been healthy all season. And when we did see him against Virginia, he didn't produce well at all. So maybe Jim was right. He's just not ready to play at this point. But I guess only time will tell.
You guys have been busy in the comments. Let's jump in there and respond to you a little bit here. Appreciate wherever you're watching us tonight. Don't forget, we do put this up on our YouTube page, on Facebook, and I pop it in my recap as well on syracuse.com. We'll send it down on social media if you do miss it, but we are here live after every game on YouTube and on Facebook. Neil says, just when I was ready to turn my attention to lacrosse, they pulled me back in. They look good tonight. Great to see. You got to start Kadari, no brainer. Neil says, Mike, you're right about that. Neil's watching us out in SoCal tonight, where it's surely warmer than the 25 degrees and snow piling up my window right now. So appreciate that. And look, those lacrosse teams are going to be good. They're both national championship contenders, but he brought up a great point. I see some other people saying, hey, what can this lead to? Michael, to answer your question, I see it in here. It is a quad 2 win for Syracuse. So Mike, that's the trick. They're 0-4 in quad 1 games. So when those come along, and there's not going to be too many of them, it looks like right now, but the 1 or 2 they're going to get down the stretch, they got to snag a couple, but these are take care of business games. And what stinks is, Syracuse plays Boston College Saturday. That doesn't help you at all. It obviously hurts you if you stumble in that one. I don't think Syracuse will. Boston College, frankly, is awful. They were down to 6 scholarship players the other night. They're just not a good team. Syracuse beat them, 101-63 in the first matchup. But it doesn't help your resume, right? This helps your resume. It's a road win. It's a quad 2 win, and Syracuse has got to get those when possible. And that's a big confidence booster too, Mike, winning on the road. It was just their second ACC win on the road this season.
Yeah, definitely a big win, and they got Boston College coming up on Saturday. Real quick, I wanted to bring to your attention, we got a real big fan of the show in the comments right now, John Lammers.
Oh, Mr. Lammers, who's asking about Big Bob Braswell.
Yeah.
The big 3, couple of rebounds down the stretch. See what happens when you go to your bench, Jim? Sometimes good things happen. Now, he had to because Quincy was in foul trouble in that spot, but maybe Robert Braswell earned a little more time.
Yeah, it was a part of that big SU run there in the second half, and right after he hit that 3, Alan Griffin hit another one. So just inserting him, he's always ready when you call his number. I think that's big about Braswell, and he's not afraid to shoot.
No, he's not. And it was encouraging to see him get after the boards a little bit. Last game, Jim tried Woody Newton a little bit, about 4 or 5 minutes. That didn't work out. So it's kind of a balance between matchups and who's got the hot hand. And, Braswell played a part in that. And that was important tonight for Syracuse overall, Mike, balance. They had all 5 starters score within, I think, before the first television timeout. Griffin took over. Buddy took over at times. Quince, everybody kind of took a turn, making important plays. We mentioned Kadari, but, Braswell gave him that spark. And if Jim could kind of throw a couple curveballs at teams going down the stretch with Braswell, with Newton, with, some things, if Joe and Jim's pretty stubborn. I don't think he's going to, bench Gerard like we think he should. But Joe in situations where he can hit the three and spark the team. That's what they needed tonight. They needed to go after somebody. They needed to play with purpose. They needed somebody to step up and kind of take command as the leader. And now they got scheduled 6 games left here. We'll see if any of the COVID postponement games get back on the schedule, maybe one at the end of the year. I'm not confident they're going to reschedule Florida State or a second Notre Dame game or a couple of the other postponements, maybe Louisville at the end of the year. We'll see. But they took care of business when they needed to here. And Jermaine says, Brent, bottom line, they got to keep it up. They can't keep stumbling. And Mike, that's it. You know, the most consistent thing about Syracuse is they have been inconsistent. Now they got to find a rhythm and keep this going.
Yeah, absolutely. Going forward, it'll be interesting to see how many, if Boeheim kind of shrinks his lineup, or if he continues to go with the same starters plus two bench guys. Because we know as it gets closer to tournament time, Boeheim typically goes with that final six player lineup, and we'll see how that manages down the stretch.
Wow, I love to see James watching us from Vancouver up in Canada. Fantastic, eh? And he says, a great game, but need to be able to maintain this quality of play, as we were just saying, against top teams. You got to take care of business, of course, against teams like Boston College that come along. Mike, the game that really intrigues me, not to look too far ahead, but Louisville is going to be a really intriguing matchup because of their high net ranking. Yeah. It's going to be a quad 1 game. They're the 3rd best defensive team in the league. So we saw what happened when Syracuse played the 2 best defensive teams in the league, and Virginia and Clemson didn't go well. Louisville can rebound. They're 2nd in the league. But here's the twist. They're in a COVID pause right now. Their coach, actually, Chris Mack, tested positive for COVID. So by the time they get back in the swing of things, will they have a game in the books before they play Syracuse on February 17th? And the big thing is that's a road game, because the game that got postponed was the one at the Dome that may or may not get made up. If they can snag that one, now they're in business. And they've got a couple of games, including this one, to kind of build up some confidence, particularly on the defensive end, to go into that one. Because that's going to be, that's going to be an important situation for Syracuse.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because that Louisville team was coming off, I think, 1 day of rest for that Syracuse game in Syracuse. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up with that size and with that length. They've been beaten up on the boards all season long. But when they win that battle, like we said, they're 10-0 when they win the rebounding battle. So the odds are, if they lose it doesn't bode well for this team.
First time, long timer, John Lammer says, Jeremy Grant, 32 against the Nets. And this guy, he's an all-star. He is just having a terrific season. And Mike, usually when you get that big fat contract, you're playing for the contract. Jeremy's gone the other way. He got the contract, and he's been better since then. And reuniting him with our old friend Troy Weaver in Detroit has been something to watch. The Detroit Pistons, I don't think, have been must-see, TV since, they made the NBA Finals a couple of times. There was that in kind of the early 2000s, of course, the Bad Boys back in the day. But you got to stop and watch the Pistons now because of Jeremy Grant. Thanks for throwing that in there, John. Dave, his good sign today was every time NC State tried to make a run, Syracuse responded with a strong defensive stand and then scored or grabbed an offensive rebound to put in points. That's a great point that Dave makes there. You got to punch back, and Syracuse hasn't been able to do that consistently this year.
Yeah, I think the biggest offensive rebound was by Alan Griffin there late in the second half. I think that was pretty much the prototypical play that he's made time and time again. He gets that offensive rebound and he puts it right back up. And that just goes to show how much effort he's giving out there, even when his shot isn't going. Maybe he'll shoot it and see it's going to be short or see it's going to be long, but he attacks the glass right after he shoots, or if his teammates shoot the ball.
Tawan says, bring on FSU. That's one of those games that got postponed, and that was a home game for Syracuse and checks all the boxes they need: a quad 1 win, a quality win, a top ACC team. Now, FSU is pretty darn good. The ACC right now is, here's Virginia, here's Florida State, And here's everybody else down here just kind of fighting for everything else, right? A lot of pretty good teams in the league. It's a weird year in college basketball, Mike. Duke is struggling. North Carolina is not ranked.
Yeah.
Kentucky stinks. UCLA, Kansas, they're out of the poll. I saw a stat the other day. I don't know if you saw this. So the 13 winningest programs in the history of college basketball, rank them 1 through 13. Syracuse is 6th on that list, by the way. Not one of those teams is currently ranked. That's I don't think that's ever happened. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a pretty wacky season, Brent. Right before Syracuse played, Duke actually lost to Notre Dame.
That's right.
And I was going to ask you that earlier. We got Duke coming up in a couple of weeks against Syracuse. Like, do you think this Syracuse team can beat that Duke team? They're 500 team right now.
What I like about when Syracuse and Duke typically play is the scores like 91-89, like that game we saw earlier. It's actually basketball. They go back and forth and they're high scoring. I think Syracuse can get in that game, that kind of game, if they play and the guys that showed up tonight shoot well. And here's a case where if you're Syracuse, you kind of want to root for people to overrate Duke. Usually you don't want them to, but you want that to be a quad one game. You want that to be a game where Syracuse gets more credit maybe than they think they should get by beating Duke just because Duke's Duke, right? So that's February 22nd. That's a big Monday game, a little down the road here. You know, not that Syracuse fans want to root for Duke, but you want to root for Duke to be decent, to be up there in the net ranking when Syracuse plays them. So they got the opportunity not only to grab a quality win, but a quality win on the road in that case. But look, Syracuse and Duke, I'd hesitate to call it a rivalry. It's kind of in its own category. But it's been fantastic ever since Duke, from game one in 2014, 91-89, back and forth game, last second shot to win. I think that went to overtime, if I'm not mistaken, 35,000 plus at the Dome. And they've been off and running ever since. So it's not what Duke, North Carolina is, I should say, but it's been a great rivalry and a lot of fun to watch. Let's see. A couple more comments here from you guys out there. David says Quincy's missing gimmies that he wasn't earlier on in the season, kind of reminiscent of fellow Canadian O'Shea Brissett. And I think, Mike, he's just getting harassed a little bit more. They're coming after him. And I'll tell you what, he's not getting the calls he should be. There's I don't know what it is with Quincy, but they're not giving him the calls that he deserves. I look at those free throw stats after the game, and I'm like, he should have been there probably 6 or 8 more times than what the stats tell us.
Yeah, I think the scouting report's out on Quincy, and so many teams are just putting a lot of bodies on him to prevent him from getting his way inside. But one thing I did like late in that game, Syracuse did go to him in the post when they tried to slow the game down and take as much clock off as possible. They went down to Quincy, and he was able to get a couple of layups.
Mike, I think that's where we're going to end it tonight. Appreciate everybody that stopped in and was hanging out with us, especially that John Lammers guy, a big fan of the show, but everybody else out there, really appreciate you coming by. And we had an international audience from Canada and from all over the reaches of the internet. So thank you for that. I'm just looking up here. Okay, so Saturday, when we come at you again, 2:00 tip, Syracuse and Boston College at the Dome. And Syracuse is in a stretch here. Clemson, NC State, BC, Louisville, 3 of 4 on the road. But the Orange will come home for Boston College. That's a 2:00 tip. So Mike and I will be on about 4:30-ish or so live. But don't forget, we do pop this video on YouTube in my recap on syracuse.com. We'll send it out on social media in case you miss it. But come on by. Hang with us on Saturday afternoon after the Orange take on Boston College. Look for all of our great coverage on syracuse.com throughout the night tonight and, of course, tomorrow on the site. Mike, thank you. Great job as always, my friend, and we'll talk to you again on Saturday.
See you then.